What happens when one of the world's most beloved martial arts stars comes face to face with a talk show host seemingly intent on provoking him? Tonight, we delve into the explosive confrontation between Jackie Chan and Stephen Colbert that left audiences in disbelief and network executives in a frenzy. This story has it all. Disrespect from a smug host, a martial arts icon tested like never before, and the moment when Hollywood politeness gave way to raw tension on live television. If you think you know Jackie Chan for his patience and discipline, you may be surprised by what unfolds. Before we dive deeper into this intense exchange, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our breakdowns of the most jaw-dropping celebrity showdowns. Let's examine how what was supposed to be a headline late-night interview unraveled into chaos. Jackie Chan was on a press tour for his latest film project, an action drama already being hailed by critics as his most powerful work in years. Everything had gone smoothly until he appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. What should have been a light, friendly conversation took an abrupt and uncomfortable turn. As Chan settled into his chair, something about Colbert's energy felt off. His usual charisma seemed forced, and his smile carried a sharpness that didn't go unnoticed. Ever the consummate professional, Chan greeted the crowd warmly with a wave and a bow, met by a standing ovation. "So, Jackie," Colbert began, barely letting the applause fade. "You're what now? 70 years old. Still doing your own stunts, or have you finally given that up?" The question, laced with condescension, took Chan by surprise. He responded politely with a smile, though a flicker of confusion crossed his face. "I still do many of my stunts," Chan answered with grace. "Not all like when I was younger, but I believe in giving audiences authenticity. My team helps ensure everything is safe." Colbert leaned in, wearing a skeptical look. "Safe? I've heard your sets are anything but. Didn't you almost die making half your movies?" Chan nodded, trying to keep the conversation positive. "Yes, I've had many injuries over my career. It's part of learning and being committed to great action films, but safety is very important." Colbert abruptly interrupted. "So, you're saying you don't really care about your stunt team's safety?" He twisted Chan's words, drawing an audible shift in the room. Chan's smile stayed, but his eyes showed restraint. "No, that's not what I said," he replied calmly. "The safety of everyone on set is always the top priority. My team is like family." Still pushing, Colbert shifted to a more personal jab. "Speaking of family, you've had some complicated relationships, haven't you? Not exactly father of the year, if the reports are to be believed." The audience gasped. Though Chan's family issues had surfaced in tabloids before, bringing them up so directly and unkindly on air broke typical talk show boundaries. Chan's demeanor shifted subtly. He was still the professional the public knew, but his guardedness was now visible. He seemed to be recalibrating, trying to make sense of the hostility. "Family is complicated for everyone," he said carefully. "I've made mistakes like anyone. I'm always working to improve." Colbert scoffed. "Improve? That's one way to put it. What about your political views? Some would say those need some improving, too." The camera caught Chan inhaling deeply, a rare sign of visible emotion from someone so famously composed. "I'd prefer to talk about the film if that's okay," he said, attempting to redirect the conversation. Colbert's smile grew thinner. "Sure, but don't people deserve to know who they're really supporting when they buy a ticket? You've made some statements about democracy that got people talking." That's when the interview truly began to spiral. Chan, who had long walked the tightrope between Eastern and Western media, suddenly found himself trapped in an interview designed for confrontation, not dialogue. "My views are often misunderstood," he began thoughtfully. "What I believe is that people shouldn't have freedom to choose their leaders, really." Colbert cut in, catching everyone off guard. The audience fell completely silent. Chan's eyes narrowed just slightly, but he kept his composure. "That is not accurate," he said firmly. "Political systems vary around the world. I respect each nation's journey. My goal has always been to unite people through entertainment, not to create division." "Unite people?" Colbert echoed, his voice heavy with skepticism. "You mean the way you collect money from American fans while backing regimes that would strip them of their freedoms if given the chance?" The tension in the studio was now unmistakable. Crew members traded uneasy looks behind the cameras. This exchange had gone beyond the usual playful back and forth of late-night interviews. Colbert was ignoring the unspoken role of showbiz. Even tough questions typically steer clear of open hostility. Yet Chan, shaped by decades of discipline, remained calm. You're twisting my words to stir up conflict where none exists, he replied evenly. I have deep respect for my American audience. They've supported me for decades. Colbert leaned back in his chair. It may have looked casual to viewers, but in the studio, it came off as dismissive. Let's talk about those decades, he said. Some critics claim you've just been making the same movie for the last 30 years. Any thoughts on that? The jab was barely concealed, and murmurs of discomfort rippled through the audience. Chan, recently awarded a Lifetime Achievement honor for his contributions to film, looked straight at Colbert with a blend of disappointment and growing frustration. Every artist has a style, he answered. Hitchcock had suspense. Chaplin had comedy. I have action. I'm proud to have brought joy to audiences for so long. Joy, Colbert challenged. Or just mindless kicks and punches tied together with broken English for laughs? Something changed in Chan at that moment. The man known for his patience and warm demeanor sat up slightly straighter. His smile didn't fade, but those familiar with him noticed the subtle shift. One that in his movies often came before he responded to an insult. Silence filled the studio again. Even casual viewers could sense a boundary had been crossed. Colbert's comment wasn't just about Chan's films. It was about his identity, his heritage, and the obstacles he overcame to find worldwide success. I think, Chan said softly, his calm voice more powerful than a shout, you don't understand what my films are truly about. Colbert seemed poised to make another biting comment, but Chan lifted his hand ever so slightly, a quiet, commanding gesture that stopped him mid-thought. For years, Chan continued, speaking slowly and clearly, I've tried to connect East and West through film. I learned English while breaking bones. I created stories while sleeping on hard floors. My career wasn't built on mockery or division, but on showing that action and laughter speak a language everyone understands. The audience broke into spontaneous applause. Though Chan hadn't raised his voice, the energy in the room shifted completely. The control of the conversation had clearly moved from host to guest. Caught off guard by the shift, Colbert tried to regain control. Well, since we're on the subject of language, what about those controversial statements of yours that supposedly got lost in translation? There's no translation problem. Chan cut in a rare move for him during interviews. The real issue is respect. You bring people onto your show, but it doesn't feel like you want a sincere conversation. Colbert's expression shifted between surprise and annoyance. Things clearly weren't unfolding the way he had intended. I'm just asking the questions our audience wants answered, he said, motioning toward the crowd. Chan turned to look at them, then back at Colbert. Are you sure these are their questions, or just the ones you think will stir up drama? Some members of the audience clapped in support, creating an awkward moment for the production team. The camera caught a producer frantically signaling from the sidelines, likely urging a move to a commercial break. Still, Colbert appeared resolute and sticking with his approach. Look, Jackie, you've been in this industry long enough to know tough questions come with the job. Before he could continue, Chan calmly interrupted. I welcome criticism of my work. What you're offering isn't criticism. It's disrespect masquerading as journalism. At that point, the tension in the studio became almost tangible. Crew members traded uneasy looks, and the audience was so silent that the hum of the air conditioning could be heard. Colbert adjusted his tie, a nervous tick that betrayed his unease. Let's change the subject then. Your new film tackles some political themes that before we go on, Chan said firmly, cutting in, I'd like to understand something. Is there a reason you're so intent on creating conflict during this interview? The directness caught Colbert off guard. It's rare for hosts to be confronted about their interview style, especially on their own show. I'm just doing my job, Colbert responded defensively. Chan gave a slow, thoughtful nod. I've been interviewed thousands of times over my 50-year career. I know the difference between challenging questions and intentional provocation. Which are you offering tonight? The question hung in the air like a pause before a well-timed strike in one of Chan's action scenes. The audience was witnessing something rare, an unplanned, unscripted moment in a highly curated talk show setting. Trying to diffuse the situation with humor, Colbert chuckled. Come on, Jackie. This is just how we do interviews in America. We dig a little deeper. Chan looked unimpressed. Interesting, he said, his tone suggesting the opposite. In my experience, American journalists are direct but fair. What you're doing feels different. Several members of the audience nodded, intensifying the discomfort on set. Colbert glanced again at his producer, clearly seeking a cue on how to steer the conversation back in his favor. Let me be clear, Chan continued, sensing Colbert's hesitation. I'm willing to talk about my films, my choices, even my failures, but I expect the same respect I give others. Instead of changing course, Colbert leaned in, his expression suggesting seriousness, but landing closer to condescension. Respect is earned, Jackie. Some might say your recent political views have lost you that respect. The audience audibly gasped. Even in the context of the already tense conversation, the comment was surprisingly sharp. Chan didn't respond right away. He took a measured sip of water from the mug beside him, then slowly placed it back on the table, aligning it with care. To those familiar with martial arts, this was a clear act of grounding, a moment of calm before a deliberate response. Mr. Colbert, Chan began, using the host's formal name for the first time. I've spent my life earning respect through action, not words. I've risked my life performing stunts to entertain people. I've given millions to charity without seeking attention. I've created jobs for thousands in the film industry across many countries. His voice remained composed but carried a firmer edge than before. You speak of respect while offering none. You say you want honest dialogue, yet you interrupt me constantly. This isn't an interview, it's an ambush. The audience broke into applause, louder and more sustained than before. Chan had put into words what many had sensed all along. Colbert now found himself in the rare and uncomfortable position of being the antagonist of his own show, with the audience clearly siding with his guest. We'll be right back after these messages, Colbert said abruptly, clearly trying to regain control by cutting to a commercial break. While home viewers didn't see what followed, audience members later reported that Colbert and Chan remained seated deep in a serious exchange. Production assistants hovered close by, visibly worried about how the rest of the interview would unfold. When cameras resumed, the air in the studio was still tense. Colbert's smile felt forced as he reintroduced the segment. We're back with Jackie Chan talking about his new movie and his extraordinary career. The tone had shifted dramatically. The earlier aggression was replaced by a strained politeness. Many speculated that producers had stepped in during the break, concerned that the show's reputation might suffer. Trying to steer the conversation into safer territory, Colbert asked, Jackie, can you tell us about the charitable foundation you've started? Chan studied him for a beat before replying. My foundation is committed to education and disaster relief. We prioritize action over words. When assistance is needed, we don't deliberate, we act. That quiet emphasis on doing rather than talking was not lost on the audience, nor on Colbert, whose smile tightened ever so slightly. That's admirable work, Colbert said, his tone more respectful than it had been before the commercial break. Your new film also explores responsibility and redemption. Could you tell us more about that? Chan nodded, appearing open to the more meaningful question. The film examines the consequences of our choices. My character is forced to confront his past actions in light of his current values. It's a universal challenge. Did you bring a clip to show our audience tonight? Colbert asked, sticking to the usual talk show script. Yes, Chan replied. Though I think the clip might need some context, something our earlier conversation didn't quite allow. The critique was delivered so gracefully that Colbert didn't register it immediately. Before he could respond, the production team had already begun playing the clip from Chan's new movie. The audience watched a short action sequence in which Chan's character made a difficult moral decision under pressure, showcasing remarkable physical skill despite his age. When the clip ended and the camera returned to the studio, the applause made it clear the audience's appreciation was for Chan, not the host or the show. As the applause died down, Colbert seemed to realize he was no longer steering the interview. He attempted a casual tone that fooled no one. You've worked with many directors throughout your career. Any favorites? Chan thought for a moment. I admire directors who see action not just as spectacle, but as a form of storytelling. Directors who show respect to everyone on set, from stars to stunt doubles to crew members. Respect leads to the best work. The message was unmistakable and Colbert looked slightly uncomfortable. Speaking of respect, Colbert continued, clearly unwilling to let go of his challenging approach. Some critics have said your recent work is more focused on commercial success than artistic value. How would you respond to that? The atmosphere grew tense again. After a brief stretch of normal conversation, Colbert had returned to provocation. Chan smiled slightly, though his eyes remained serious. Every artist has to balance creativity with commercial needs. Wouldn't you say the same goes for television hosts? His response was smooth, turning the question back on Colbert and drawing attention to the similarity in their professions. Several audience members chuckled at the clever retort. Colbert looked briefly caught off guard. "Well, that's—" Colbert began. Chan continued. "Maybe we should talk about why this interview seems structured around conflict instead of genuine dialogue. Has controversy become more important than substance?" The studio fell quiet. Colbert's face showed a flicker of surprise, perhaps even a hint of embarrassment. "That's not." Colbert began, his tone defensive. "In my films," Chan said gently, cutting in, "my characters often face conflict, but in real life I choose harmony. I wonder why you've chosen another path this evening." The quiet rebuke carried more weight than an angry reaction ever could. A few audience members nodded in agreement. "We're doing a television show," Colbert replied, now somewhat dismissive. "We ask tough questions to go beyond scripted promotion." Chan nodded. "Tough questions are valuable when they come from real curiosity. Yours seem to come from somewhere else." The audience murmured their agreement. Colbert glanced at the teleprompter, clearly looking for a safer topic. "Let's talk about your upcoming projects," he offered, trying to shift the conversation. "Before we do," Chan said firmly, "I'd like to share something meaningful." He turned to the audience. "I've been fortunate to receive support from audiences around the world. American viewers in particular have welcomed me despite cultural differences, language gaps, and occasional misunderstandings. That acceptance means a lot to me. It's why I continue making films that bring joy and excitement across cultures." The audience broke into spontaneous applause, with many rising to their feet. The camera caught Colbert observing the reaction, his jaw visibly tightened. Once the noise settled, Chan continued. "In my experience, most Americans value authenticity, hard work, and treating others with dignity. These are values I share." His message was unmistakable. Chan was implying that Colbert's confrontational tone clashed with those American values, further alienating the host from the crowd. Realizing how fragile the situation had become, Colbert attempted to salvage his professional stance. "Well, those are certainly important values in the entertainment industry," he began. "In all industries," Chan gently interrupted, "and in all human interactions." Before Colbert could respond, Chan rose from his seat, an uncommon move for a guest before being formally dismissed. "I think our time is complete," he said, offering a slight bow to the audience. "Thank you for your attention tonight." The crowd, recognizing the extraordinary moment, erupted in applause once more. Instead of returning to his chair, Chan extended a hand to Colbert, who stood and accepted it, clearly left with no alternative. The cameras captured Colbert's expression, a mix of surprise, irritation, and the slow realization that the interview had gone terribly wrong. Network executives would later describe it as 7 minutes of television that cost us millions in talent relationships. Throughout it all, Chan remained composed. He bowed one final time before calmly exiting the set as producers hurriedly cut to commercial. In the aftermath, the production team found itself divided. Some defended Colbert's line of questioning as an attempt to break through Chan's reserved demeanor. Others believed he had crossed important boundaries of professionalism and cultural sensitivity. For viewers, the event stood out as a rare unscripted clash in a setting usually marked by control and polish. Jackie Chan, known globally for his charisma and physical feats, responded not with force, but with calm dignity, skillfully turning Colbert's hostility back on itself without ever raising his voice or losing control. In the following days, clips of the interview spread rapidly across social media, with analysts dissecting every comment and gesture. Public sentiment heavily favored Chan, while Colbert faced a wave of backlash over his conduct. The moment ignited broader conversations about the nature of celebrity interviews, where the line lies between legitimate inquiry and antagonism, and what responsibility hosts bear in treating their guests with respect. The exchange also underscored Chan's rare position in the entertainment world, an icon whose global appeal crosses cultural lines and whose quiet strength outshone the framework of a talk show. What happened that night wasn't just an awkward exchange. It was a moment when the polished illusion of late-night television met the unshakable grace of a man who had spent decades building a legacy. So, what's your take on this powerful exchange? Did Colbert overstep with his confrontational style? Or should celebrities always be prepared for challenging interviews when promoting their work? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this analysis compelling, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss more insights into the entertainment world's most telling moments. Also, let us know what other celebrity confrontations you'd like us to explore in future videos.